What's going on, everybody? Glad you joined in on this episode of Coach's Corner. I'm going to be talking about 3 or 4 loans or approaches to mortgages that you might use in what we are in right now, a high interest rate market, and some strategies you could use. I'm going to keep it short and sweet, get to the point. Stay tuned. Let's get it.
If you're over 40 and want to be the best version of yourself, Fit Over 40 with Coach Clarence is here to help.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Coach's Corner. And in today's show, I am going to be talking to you about 3 types of loans that you should be considering in a high interest rate market, okay? There are a lot of loans, there are a lot of scenarios, a lot of ways to skin a cat, as you've heard the saying before. So I kind of want to talk to you about what's working with our clients and what we're doing and why we're doing, kind of go over the pros and cons of each pros. Most people think, well, the interest rates are high, so I better get in a fixed rate mortgage. Well, let's talk about what a fixed rate mortgage is. And if this is very basic for you guys, that's fine. Just hang with me. I tie it all together. A fixed rate mortgage means the interest rate doesn't change for the life of the loan. So if you get 7% as an example, your interest rate is 7% for 30 years, 15 years, 20, 10, whatever you do. Okay. Now let's talk about the cousin of the fixed rate. That is a ARM, adjustable rate mortgage, as you will hear it called. So what's an adjustable rate mortgage? Well, obviously it adjusts. There is a set period of time when that loan is fixed at a certain interest rate, but then that loan will adjust according to the market. And depending on the different margins and different indexes, that thing can fluctuate, but there is a cap how far it can go. So that can be a strategic way to approach this market, getting in at a lower rate and preparing for when the loan changes, the rates change, you need to refinance. So there are all types of ways to do it. So the first one we're talking about is fixed or ARMs. Both of those play into it. What are the pros of a fixed rate? Obviously, it's fixed. You can budget. You know what you need to do. There are no issues. There are no cons other than it's a little higher starting rate than something that would be on an adjustable rate. So if we look at an ARM, what are the cons? The cons are very simple. Your rate is going to be lower, so you're going to have a smaller payment. Okay, the cons are when that thing adjusts, if something goes wrong in your life, maybe you screwed up your credit, or maybe, I don't know, maybe your home doesn't appreciate and you need to adjust that and you need to try to refinance and get out of that thing. Or maybe you've, done whatever and changed your situation and you can't get out of that. And I'm saying this very loosely because if you're one of my clients, we are paying attention to your credit. We are watching your spending, and everything we do is to put you in a better financial situation than when you started. But I've seen it happen. I've seen people bite off more than they can chew. They were enjoying that low payment. Maybe they took on some other debt. Now their debt ratio is different from when we started. So that could be a con, okay? Now, the second type of loan that you should be considering is a buy down. Why did I follow buy down right behind ARMs and fixed? Because they're kind of the same, a little different though. What is a buy down? You and the seller and the realtor all negotiate. The seller is going to pay down the difference between what the fixed starting rate would be to that lower intro. Back in the days, we used to call those teaser rates, just to get a person in and get them excited, get them in the loan. All right, what are the cons of a 2-1 buy down, 3-1 buy down? Let's just break it down. For 2 years, let's say the interest rate's 8%, like where it kind of be right now, 8%. You do a 2-1 buy down, you're going to get a 6% starting rate. Year number 2, you're going to get a 7% interest rate so that you gradually get that higher payment. Again, if you're smart, what you want to do is make sure you can afford the initial payment, which your loan will adjust to after you pass through that buy down period, and make that extra payment to principal. Knock some of that principal down. Be strategic about where you're spending the money. Make an extra payment, all these good things, so that if you stay in that loan and it adjusts as it does, you're set. Here's the good news with all our clients. When we see rates change or rates moving more favorably, we either lock them into a low rate and then we get rid of that situation. What are the cons? Again, there are not a lot of cons unless you're not financially responsible and you don't pay your bills, or you screw something up, or maybe you bite off more than you can chew and get some more debt and you don't qualify when it's time to refinance you into a lower rate. That could be the cons. Um, I think a 2-1 buy down is great for a lot of people. It's just because it gets you in the house at a lower payment. You're able to manage it, and it is awesome to start with that. Not a whole lot of cons. Pros are obvious. Lower interest rate to start. It also may help you qualify. But remember, you have to qualify for the starting rate first. But what it does is it eases that debt ratio down a little bit when you get the lower payment. So you don't have to bite off such a big bite of the pie in the beginning. So 2 loans we're talking about with clients right now. The first one are the fixed rates, the ARMs. Second are the buy downs, which are kind of similar if you think about them. They're designed to get you in the house at a lower payment, make that payment shock a little easier. All right. Now, the third thing we're doing right now in this high interest rate market are HELOCs. We are getting people into HELOCs. We are combining all their high debt, their car payments, their credit card payments, any kind of loan, maybe student loans, and consolidate them into a lower payment. Now, it's not going to be the same rate as your first, but if you look at your combined debt, the lower payment based on the lower payment that's tied to your house is going to be a lot cheaper than what you're paying at the combined high interest rates of the car loan, the credit card. So we call that a blended rate. So you'll hear me ask people, what is your blended rate? That means all your debt combined. Are you really paying 3% on that mortgage? And why aren't you using that that debt wisely? Make debt work for you. If you're going to have a lot of debt, make it work for you. Make it make sense. We have all kinds of charts and things you can use to show you how much to pay, how to tweak those payments to get them down low. So what are the benefits of a HELOC? The benefits of a HELOC is that it operates like a credit card in a sense. You're borrowing against your equity. So let's just say for simple math, you have enough equity to take 100 grand out and use it as a HELOC. And let's say your first project only requires 20 grand. Well, you still got another 80 and you're only being charged on the 20,000 that you borrowed to do that project. So again, great management. Now, if we pay down a bunch of debt, like in a HE loan, then your loans are now paid off and you're just paying that debt at a lower rate. Again, strategically doing things and then not running those credit cards back up, keeping the balances where they need to be. This is all part of that credit management. So what would be a con of having a HELOC? Well, obviously a HELOC is tied to prime. So when it's adjusting every month or every time they change the rates, your payment's going to go up. It's just that simple. But there are some cool things you can do with HELOCs. You can go 10 years interest only. Again, if you are smart with your money and you're putting in investment tools and things that pay you, you can really be strategic and use that interest only payment. Now, I don't want to get into too many nuances here because I don't know who's watching. So I don't want to tell somebody who's not good at managing their money to do something crazy. And then they end up saying, you told me that in the video. Well, so my disclaimer is I need to talk to you and go over your personal situation first. But I'm just giving you some cool things you can do in a high interest rate market. Another thing that you can do, and this is not a loan, this is just common sense. Make sure your credit is in order. I tell my clients you should look at your credit twice a year. There are mistakes on about 70 to 80% of people have errors on their credit. There are things that are tied to maybe a similar name. You might be tied to an address. So it's always a good idea to check your credit, make sure it's where you need to be, or if you're about to make a big purchase, maybe you may, having someone like myself look at it, see what you need to do. Maybe you just need to bring that credit balance down and you can, get a higher interest rate. I'm sorry, not a higher interest rate, a higher credit score. Excuse me. We don't want you to get a higher interest rate, a higher credit score by lowering your usage. So there are a lot of things we can do in this market. And what we shouldn't do is be afraid. Everybody's talking about rates. I've been doing this for a while, and it is still the first thing people ask me, what is the rate? I don't know. What do you want the rate to be? Let's play that game. Well, I want the lowest rate. Okay, the lowest rate might cost you a little bit to get the lowest rate. Nothing wrong with that, but just understand what it takes. Or, Why is interest rate such a big deal? Because I always say interest rate is what people brag about at pool parties and events. Well, I have 2%. Well, I have 3%. I was with some clients that I did a refinance for a couple years ago. They're at 2.99 on a 15-year. They're solid. You know, that's not going to happen for a while. Now, anything's possible, but being realistic, I don't see anybody getting under 3% anytime soon. And the funny thing is, if you go back in history, 7% is kind of normal. I think we got spoiled over COVID and people got a lot of low interest rates. Remember, it's the payment that you have to deal with. The interest rate is just a thing. You can write off interest on certain types of loans if you're using home improvements. You can be strategic, and you can also make strategic principal payments to help offset what you're paying in interest. You can also, when you refinance, maybe don't do a 30-year term, maybe go down to 20 or 25 or a 15 if you can afford it, or look at what the 15-year payment is, get a 30-year mortgage, and then pay the 15-year price. And then let's say 1 month maybe you want to put your money somewhere else and you can't make that payment. You're at the 30-year payment instead of the 15 years, so you can be smart with it. All this is about being smart. Here's the cool thing. While we're doing all this, your equity is doing this. It's going up. All these people waiting on this fence, not buying right now because they're worried about the rates. Listen, appreciation is growing. You've seen me do videos. There are tons of videos out there about what home appreciation is doing right now. So you should not be on the fence. If you can buy and you can afford, buy. Here's another thing I want to talk about. Your first house isn't always going to be your dream house, but get started in the home ownership. Build that equity. Then maybe you can buy a bigger house. Maybe it's just you and your boyfriend or girlfriend or spouse. You guys are newlyweds. It's just you. There's no kids yet. Why do you need the big house? Start with a condo. Just get involved in ownership. As your needs change, you've built up equity. You're smart with your money. You're working your financial plan. You're talking to one of our financial planners that are on the team. And we are building a financial success strategy for you. That's what it is all about with Team Ferguson. It is about helping you build a very stable financial future. Credit is important. Learning how equity works, learning how interest works, learning how appreciation works. All these things matter when you're thinking about buying a home, refinancing a home, or using the equity. Having a plan, having a solid goal will help you get there. So let's recap. What are 3 loans you should be looking at in a high interest rate market? Number 1, something that's fixed that you can afford and it fits in your budget. Again, we have ways of showing you how you can pay a little extra here, a little extra there, and you can nip that loan down to a shorter time. I did a video on my Instagram channel, and if you're not following me, go to Clarence M. Ferguson on Instagram. I did a video about how you can make little payments and knock your loan down over time. Then we talked about ARMs. If you're financially savvy, an ARM can be a great loan for you because as long as you know what the risks are. What are the risks? You got 1 or 2 years before that thing changes. And if you go all the way to that second year, let's say for some reason rates are higher than they are now, just know that you got to adjust for it. You'll know what the payment will look like. It'll already be scripted out on the amortization scale. All right, so ARMs can be very strategic. Let's say you don't plan on being here for a long time. That ARM might be perfect for you because you'll be leaving, you get a lower payment. Again, just knowing the nuances. Now we go right into the 2-1 buy down, 3-1 buy down, 1-1 buy down, because it's the same as an ARM in a way, although it's set up differently because the seller is contributing to paying down the difference you would pay in the rate. Let's use 80% again as an example. Your starting rate might be 7, 6, or 5, depending on if you do a 3, 2, or 1. And then the difference is paid by an escrow account that's paying the difference. So you're still making the same payment. It's just who's paying it out. What does that do? It allows you to get into a house for a lot cheaper. Remember, you have to qualify for the actual rate. So that 8% in this example. So the third one, things you could be looking at, HELOC. I'm going to throw one bonus one in, and I've talked about this before, finding a multi-unit or multi-generational property or going in with one or two people to buy your first property, okay? This is a great idea. You can split the cost over 2 or 3, 4 people maybe. And that gets you into that home ownership. And as you get your appreciation, get your little piece of it, you can start that nest egg for your own individual house. I definitely recommend people get into home ownership, learn what it's like. I'm not knocking people who are renting. I've rented, I've had to rent before. As long as you're being strategic, if you're renting and you're being strategic, it's not a big deal. Or maybe you just say, look, I don't want the responsibilities of home ownership. You've made that decision. You're comfortable where you're at. Problem with rent, if you don't have a guaranteed monthly payment, the landlord can change it. We're seeing these landlords change rent all over the place. Wages are not keeping up with rent. We know that. So you need to be doing everything you can. Get a side hustle, a side business. Do not rely on someone for your financial future. That is a big mistake. All right. I'm keeping this short and sweet. There's so many different things I could talk about on these topics, but I wanted to come on and just talk about something you can do in a high interest rate market. One of the best things you do is not panic. Get on the phone call. Talk about the nuances. I talked to a young lady today. She was renting. She was sick of renting. I showed her what she could buy, what she was paying in rent. She said she didn't want to pay that much. I showed her about $500 difference. Showed her how much house she can get. She was shocked. You do not have to rent. A lot of people think they have to rent. They're just bought in to get an apartment, then a house. Now, I get it while you're putting your money together, that might be the move. But if you can buy right now, please buy. Because that same property in 5 years is going to be a big payoff, and you're going to thank me. You're going to say, hey, man, great advice on that. All right, short and sweet. This is Coach's Corner. What you should be doing in high interest rate is not panicking and talking to your boy. I will see you next time. This is Coach Clarence, and this has been Coach's Corner.